With Saquon Barkley being taken off the PUP list, where do you feel comfortable drafting him? That and much, much more on today's episode of 2 Point Stance. Lauren, where do you feel comfortable drafting Saquon Barkley right now?
He's a first rounder still. I mean, I have no problem taking him, top five, with the exception and the understanding that I still think it's maybe a little risky, maybe just because I'm, a worrywart. So I don't have any problem maybe stocking up on running backs a little earlier than I normally would if Saquon Barkley does fall to me in that space. But he's off the PUP list. He looked great in training camp. So yeah, he's back to full form pre-draft, which happened right after I was drafting for another league, of which I passed on Saquon Barkley at the 10th spot.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's tough. You might regret that one
Oh, I
just
already
a
do.
little bit. Yeah.
I already do.
Yeah, I mean, last week it was crazy. People started freaking out about the injury, and Saquon was consistently falling into the second round of best ball drafts, which is just mind blowing. So now that he's off the PUP list, and we don't know that he's 100% healthy. We don't know if he's going to get a full workload, but knowing the talent that Saquon Barkley is, you can disregard the offensive line worries and the quarterback worries and whatever else is going on in New York. Saquon Barkley is arguably the most talented back in the league. So for that reason alone, I've got him as my RB5, and I would be more than comfortable taking him there. If you were able to draft, within the last week or so and cash in on that late first, early second round ADP, congratulations, because you were probably able to build a pretty nice team. But I think that the worry should be gone now that he's practicing, and we should expect him, even if limited for a first couple weeks, to be back at his elite form in 2021. Well, I want to thank everybody for tuning into another episode of 2 Point Stance. I'm Dave Kluge, and I'm here with Lauren Carpenter. Today's episode is going to just talk about news, because that's really all we've got going on right now. We've done sleepers, we've done busts, we've done overhyped players, like we've done division breakdowns, but now with camps in full effect, I mean, we could spend this whole show talking about just injuries if we wanted to, but there's some other buzz and rumors that we can get to. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Before we do that, though, I want to mention that if you are tired of the same old fantasy contests and you think you've got what it takes to flex on the competition and win this season's hottest fantasy football contest, you can do it. $100 can't get you as much as it used to in fantasy football, but what if I told you that for a $100 entry, you can win a grand prize of $225,000 and a VIP trip for two to Super Bowl in Los Angeles this year, with a ton of other weekly prizes? FanUp's Flex Frenzy season-long contest is the perfect fantasy contest for you or any other fan. It's fun, it's easy, it's quick, and there's no boring salary caps or drafts. The Flex contest combines the best of redraft and best ball, allowing you to just be fans. Now, when I saw this, I couldn't believe it. There are only a total of 5,000 entries for this contest, and it just costs $100 per entry, or you can get 3 teams for $275 for the entire season. So you got to love the chances to cash in on a prize there. All you do is pick 7 starting players every single week in the NFL regular season, weeks 1 through 17. Your flex has a minimum, your flex player has a 1.5 time multiplier, which is, the reason for the Flex Frenzy title. But you'll watch your players rack up fantasy points in real time, get to trash talk with the best of them in a robust social community on FanUp. Compared to other apps and fantasy contests, this is a game-winning Hail Mary that no one will want to miss out on. The contest pays out to over 200 entries, and weekly prizes include awesome autographed football jerseys of your favorite players and so much more from Fanatics, Peloton bikes, Nike, Adidas, all sorts of sponsorships that they have. Sign-ups start this week and end on Thursday, September 9th, so you've still got some time to sign up. Join an awesome community of over 50,000 fantasy and esports fans who love to compete against each other and team up as friends for the ultimate prizes and bragging rights. Download the app today that everybody is talking about, FanUp. You can find it on the App Store for Apple. Everybody must be 18 years or older to play, and restrictions apply by state. But FanUp, just be fans. All right. So the first thing I want to talk about here, and this is a guy we've talked about a lot on this show, Zack Moss. Zack Moss is catching eyes right now in camp, and everybody's saying that he looks like the best running back at camp. So right now he's fallen into like the 9th, 10th round. Are you willing to take him earlier than that, Lauren?
No, I am not willing to take Zack Moss earlier than that. He's just fine where he is at his current ADP, which is 10th, 9th. I wouldn't mind taking a shot if my roster allowed that to happen, but I'm not excited about this. This is camp hype. We'll see. Meh. I don't buy into this very much at all. It's just like you have to weed through those notifications and the news that you get every single day out of training camp, because everything is very sunny, rainbow and roses, unless there's injuries, God forbid.
Yeah, I mean, it's really the thing is they're not hyping up Devin Singletary. Every camp report that we're reading from beat reporters, coaches, fans, everybody is saying that Devin Singletary, isn't really doing much, and Zack Moss is looking like the guy right now, which is what they drafted him to be last year. So he had that toe injury that I think really kind of kept him from getting up to speed, but there's got to be something to get a little bit excited about there right now. I mean, it's crazy when you're looking at ADP that you have backups that are getting drafted before the lead running back on a powerhouse team. So guys like Nyheim Hines and AJ Dillon and Gus Edwards are getting drafted around the same spot as Zack Moss. So he's somebody that I want to get excited about. And I think the reason that people are so scared is because, Josh Allen's going to run the ball in the end zone. But if we're hearing this consistently about Zack Moss for the entire offseason, he's somebody that you might start to see just creep up draft boards a little bit. So this is something that I get really excited about. Zack Moss was a guy that I was big on last year, and it didn't pan out. And, I'm not trying to suffer from take lock here. It's something that I just, think that the toe injury in that really kept him. So I'm hoping that he can bounce back a little bit this year. And I think I'd be willing to take him a little bit above his ADP.
Yeah, I can definitely see the argument. I'm just personally not in that camp. But again, if it works out, I'm not gonna bemoan myself for taking him if it happens to be there. He's just not one of those guys that's on my personal excitement radar.
Yeah, I totally get it. So another guy that probably isn't on your excitement radar is Donta Foreman, but he just signed with the Atlanta Falcons. And what I'm wondering, does this change Mike Davis's ranking for you at all? Do you think a lot of people think he's going to be the bell cow? I don't really know. What's your thought on this, Lauren?
Mike Davis doesn't really move much for me, mostly because I didn't have Mike Davis very high in the first place. So, I mean, to me, that's not this huge knock or huge, for either way. But like 2011 called and they want D'Onta Foreman back. Like, really? This is fascinating. Of all of the RBs they could have signed, Foreman, let's go. Okay. I'm excited for him as a player, fantasy-wise. No, you are absolutely correct. This is not on my excitement radar. Interesting, fun to watch, but not like salivating for fantasy.
Yeah, and I think this just shows, I don't think that Mike Davis is going to be the bell cow that everybody wants him to. He was in a very running back friendly system last year playing in Carolina. I mean, I'm not saying that he's anything close to the talent that Christian McCaffrey is, but we've seen how well Christian McCaffrey can produce here and the volume that he gets. And Mike Davis just kind of slipped into that role last year and was kind of a poor man's Christian McCaffrey. And I feel like that really has people expecting really big things from him this year. But when you look at what he did prior to that year where he became the starter in Carolina, his time in Seattle was pretty underwhelming. His time in Chicago, he really didn't do too much. And now he's 28 years old. I don't think that they trust him with a full workload. Even last year, we saw him tail off as the season went on. So I think that he's not really built for a full workload. And they've got Quadre Olesen, they've got Javian Hawkins. And even with those two guys, they still didn't feel comfortable with their running back committee. And they went out and they signed Donta Foreman. So, well, this probably isn't something like, oh, Donta Foreman is coming in there. I think this is just the team showing their cards a little bit and showing that they aren't really content or, feel that great about Mike Davis as their lead back if they're still drafting and bringing in free agent running backs. So people that are expecting, 250 carries from Mike Davis, bump the brakes just a little bit. I don't think that's going to happen this year in Atlanta.
Spicy, but not surprising.
Well, we don't have a lot more running back news, but let's switch to wide receiver because this has been a crazy week for wide receivers. And the story right now that everybody's headlining is that Jamar Chase wasn't showing much separation. Paul Denner Jr., one of the beat reporters, said that he is looking a little slow, that he's struggling to separate. What do you make of that, Lauren?
There's a lot that I could make out of this. I am not getting worried yet because there is so much that this kid is going through right now. These are training camp. This is a brand new team. It's hot. Let's not forget that. It's, in the middle of the nasty humidity of summer. So I think that and also learning a new playbook, learning a new offense. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it. So I am not, sounding my alarm bells quite yet, but it is something that I will keep an eye on, which is going to be like really sad for everyone who loves Jamar Chase, but I am a Tyler Boyd truther. So I kind of like this for, the veteran presence of Tyler Boyd, but I'm sorry, Jamar Chase's quarterback is still, from college is still his quarterback. in the NFL. And that will go very far for Ja'Marr Chase as well. Also, Joe Burrow hasn't really been looking that good in camp either. So who knows? I think it's early. I think we need to keep an eye on it, but I wouldn't be freaking out just yet.
Yeah, I think everybody is just kind of, it's almost like a meme at this point that people just love to clown on the Bengals. Everybody felt like they knew better than the Bengals did and saying that they should have drafted Sewell instead of Chase. And it seems like everybody has such a strong opinion on what the Bengals should do that as soon as a little bit of negative news came out, everybody wanted to pile on. They talked about Joe Burrow struggling. They talked about Ja'Marr Chase struggling. And it's something that I'm not really buying into too much. Actually, it gets me a little bit excited because now I feel like I might be able to draft Ja'Marr Chase in some leagues where I felt like his ADP was so high before. If this is going to cause people to freak out and suppress his ADP a little bit, this is just an opportunity for me to get him at a better value. So I like it.
I know.
And
I like it too.
And you already called out that he is learning a brand new playbook. And what you didn't say is that he didn't play in 2020 either. Like he hasn't taken a football snap since 2019. So of course it's going to take him some time to get up to speed. I think this should have almost been expected. And if that's something that people are going to freak out about, cool. That just sounds like you can draft Ja'Marr Chase at an even better value than we were able to before. So I'm all for it.
Yeah, and we can totally just inject subterfuge. And for everybody listening and watching, I am totally not against subterfuge within your leagues. Feel free to talk about it. Be like, oh, Ja'Marr Chase, he looks so bad in camp. Share the, notifications with your friends in your leagues and be like, oh, woe is me. It's okay. These things happen in fantasy football because technically you're not lying. You're literally sharing news that you've heard that day. I am not above subterfuge.
Oh, I do it all the time. That's like one of my favorite things. The second a bad report comes out about a player that I want, that's immediately getting sent to all of my fantasy football group chats. And just like, oh, we should start freaking out. Ja'Marr Chase not looking too good. Meanwhile,
then people never know when to believe me either. Like not my fantasy friends that I help with fantasy football, but like my competitors that I go up against in my leagues never know when to believe me because they're like, I don't trust you. I'm like, good, you shouldn't.
Yep. That's how it should be. There's
some
mind tricks.
It's competition.
A little game theory, a little bit of psychology.
There is.
I lied though. I said that we were done with running back talk, but there is another story that I want to talk
about. Fraud.
Completely forgot about this one. And this is something that's very interesting because let me just read the quote because it seems like people are taking this two ways. Like if you're a Jonathan Truther, you're going to highlight one part. And if you're not, sold on Jonathan Taylor, you're going to highlight the other part. So Frank Reich came out and said, I think going into this season, this year, it'll be a little bit more, hey, Jonathan will be a little bit more the bell cow, but we're still going to spread it around. What do you make of that? Because it seems like people are really just using it to bolster whatever their preconceived notion was. So a bit of a bell cow, but we're going to spread it out. What are you supposed to expect with Jonathan Taylor?
I think this is the best coach speak ambiguity that I've heard out of training camp yet this season. That is fantastic. Well done, Frank Reich. I need to take notes on how well that was done. But I take out of this what I have taken out before he even spoke. Jonathan Taylor is an amazing running back. He is incredibly talented. He knows what he's doing at his position. He is going to be a stud. I'm not worried about that. But there is also other running backs on the team. Marlon Mack is still there. Nyheim Hines that we mentioned before. So this is not just a Jonathan Taylor running back room that is nobody else is involved. So I think that it's just a subtle reminder of, hi, we have really other talented guys on this team besides Jonathan Taylor. Yes, we like him. Yes, we're going to use him, but we are not going to run the wheels off of him in the first, 4 weeks. Get used to that. That is not changed, and that is not going to change. So this just kind of reaffirms what I already thought, is that this is going to be a committee backfield, and every single one of those players is going to have their own identity, and that does include Jonathan Taylor as well. So all the truthers out there that are like, RB1, he's going to finish ahead of everybody. It's like that's probably not likely because that's just not how that offense is run.
I agree. And I think that so much of Jonathan Taylor's value comes down to how we expect Marlon Mack to bounce back. Because Marlon Mack was a great running back. I mean, he didn't have the draft capital, but he really came out and looked great in Indianapolis. And it's kind of easy to behind that line. So, is it the offensive line or is it Marlon Mack? But either way, Marlon Mack was very effective in the role that he had in Indianapolis. So I think that if he bounces back, it's going to be that's kind of where it comes down to, because you can't not put the ball in Marlon Mack's hands when he's healthy. So, if he's able to bounce back and look good, I think that's going to be really tough for Jonathan Taylor. But if that Achilles injury lingers, or if he's not feeling himself, if he's struggling to plant and cut and all that, then we can see a huge blow up from Jonathan Taylor. But what did you want to add to that?
Yeah, so the thing with Marlon Mack is very intriguing. And yes, that is obviously going to be a volume issue. If Marlon Mack is fully healthy, can come back, can put in the reps, can put in the snaps, stays on the field, obviously that's going to, boil down to how many touches that Jonathan Taylor can get. But there may be a difference between his freshman year, rookie year, if you will, going into his, second year, sophomore year. But Jonathan Taylor was very slow to start when Marlon Mack went down. And it was a very similar situation to what we talked about with David Montgomery, where he was finishing week to week. And Jonathan Taylor did well against poor defenses against running backs. He was not this explosive talent that didn't, have to rely on a bad defense in order to do well in fantasy. And that is just something to remember when you go into this season. It's not just the recency bias of how well that they did. Also, that goes true for David Montgomery as well. So it's just, he is really good. He is very young still, but he didn't really show me that he is this poetry in motion type of running back that everyone seems to believe that he is. So not only is there Marlon Mack that you mentioned, who can be on the field, and if he does well, he's still going to be there. I don't get it. That's why I haven't really bought into the large amount of Jonathan Taylor hype, and why he's going so early in drafts is kind of beyond me. But if he does really awesome this season, y'all can throw egg on my face and be like, "Told you so, stepmom Lauren."
No, I like Jonathan Taylor, and I think that he kind of deserves to be in like that low end RB1 discussion. But it's almost like his following has gotten kind of cult like at this point.
It has, like I said, poetry in motion. Everyone's like, "Dude, don't you dare besmirch Jonathan Taylor. You shall be smote." I don't even know if that made sense, but it did in my head. But it literally is like, you can't say anything bad about Jonathan Taylor or you will be hated by the masses.
And the term everyone keeps throwing around about Jonathan Taylor is generational talent. And I see that in articles. I see it on Twitter. And I don't know, do generational talents drop into the mid-second round? Because that's where Jonathan Taylor got drafted. Generational talent, when I think of generational talent, I think of guys that are getting drafted at the very top of the draft that, have been watched since high school and what they're going to be. Saquon Barkley, that guy might qualify as a generational talent. Kyle Pitts, if he pans out to be the player he is. But like generations, it's like 15 to 20 years, right? Like it seems like people are just throwing around like every single year. There's just multiple generational talents coming into the draft. And that's what everyone's saying about Jonathan Taylor now. I mean, I like him. I think he's in a great situation. He's a very good running back, but I think that everyone just needs to cool their jets a little bit on the Jonathan Taylor hype train. But
agreed.
Anyway, let's get back to wide receivers, because we went off on that little tangent. And what I want to talk about, and this is tough not to read into, and But Mecole Hardman is listed as the wide receiver 2 on the Chiefs depth chart. So we've waited for this breakout for years. Hasn't really happened yet. Is this a year that we finally see Mecole Hardman break out?
The possibility is there, but the matter of fact is that Travis Kelce is the receiver 2. I don't want to call him the wide receiver because he's a tight end. So depth charts are words written, names written on a piece of paper, but we'll have to see how that moves going forward. Mecole Hardman really has to work on his drops. And those are things that he struggled with. Last year, he dropped a lot of catchable passes. So, I mean, possibly if he can take a step forward in that regard, he can build way more chemistry with Patrick Mahomes, who is a generational talent, if we can use that term. That's a real generational talent right there. Oh, I'm going to be getting so much hate on Twitter after this. Oh my goodness. That's all right. I don't mind.
No, I mean, you're right. Patrick Mahomes is the definition of a generational talent.
Yeah.
But going back to Mecole Hardman, I don't really see it happen. I feel like we've been hoping for this since Patrick Mahomes' breakout rookie year. We're like, all right, well, there needs to be a wide receiver 2 on this team that's going to step up. And it hasn't happened. We thought it was going to be Sammy Watkins. We thought Demarcus Robinson. People were buying into Byron Pringle last year. And now Mecole Hardman, people are saying with Sammy Watkins there, it can open up some more opportunity. But I'm just not seeing it because, my theory is that, targets are earned. A good wide receiver is going to find his way onto the field, and he's going to get open, and he's going to get targets. Mecole Hardman now has been in the year for 2 years. He saw 41 targets last year. He saw 62 targets the year before. I don't think that suddenly because Sammy Watkins is out of the picture that Mecole Hardman is suddenly going to see 110, 120 targets. I just don't think he's that type of player. So even if he sees a little bit of an uptick to 70, 80 targets, sure, he might be the wide receiver 2, but like you said, Travis Kelce is the real number 2. It's the Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill show over there. I think that we're going to see Clyde Edwards-Helaire a little bit more involved in the passing game. And then from there on out, it's not like Patrick Mahomes really needs to fixate on anybody. If he can't find Kelce, Hill, or Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he's just going to find whoever's open. And so far, that hasn't really been Mecole Hardman. So I'm not too crazy about it.
Yeah, I like Hardman. If he falls super late in a draft, I don't mind picking him up to take a shot on him, just in case. You never know. But then I won't feel bad when I drop him out, into the waiver wire, and because I wouldn't have wasted a ton of draft capital on it. So it's something I'm interested in because really, like I said, I think it's about the drops, and I think that has to do with confidence and, like we were saying, building chemistry with Patrick Mahomes and earning those targets, which I think is possible. So I wouldn't mind taking a shot, but I'm not going to reach for him, and I'm not going to be married to it.
You know what? I actually didn't know about Mecole Hardman's drops too much, and I just looked it up. He had 8 drops last year, which doesn't sound like a lot, but he only saw 62 targets. Yeah. Meanwhile, you hear everybody freaking out about Deontay Johnson and his drops. He had 10 drops on 142 targets, so almost over double the targets and only 2 more drops. So I did not realize that Mecole Hardman had that drop issue. That is certainly something that I'll be looking a little bit deeper into. Nice pull there, Lauren.
You're welcome.
So another wide receiver that we want to talk about, and this is an injury related, DJ Chark had surgery on his finger. So does this move him in your rankings at all? I mean, this Jacksonville team, realistically, we could probably just talk about for the entire hour, but let's just talk about DJ Chark. Does this finger surgery affect your rankings?
I didn't have Chark super duper high anyway. What is his recovery time on his surgery? Because the last I looked, I did not see a recovery time.
They haven't said anything. They said it was.
They haven't said anything about it. That is concerning. That is definitely concerning, and it's concerning with a rookie quarterback that I think. I don't know how he's going to start because Trevor Lawrence is one of those guys that's kind of crazy good, but a wild card because we don't really know how he's gonna go. But one thing I am gonna do today is on the NFL Network today, Jacksonville Jaguars are getting covered for their training camp by Maurice Jones-Drew. So that is one thing I will be paying very close attention to when I listen to all of them talk about what's going on with that offense, when they're doing the interviews, they're talking to the players, talking to the coaches. So that's one thing I will now look a lot more closely at because again, I still hadn't heard any recovery time. And if you haven't either, it is a little concerning for me with Chark. But I love Chark. I think he's so good.
I mean, so he definitely showed some flashes a couple of years ago, and I feel like that's what people are still chasing onto or holding on to, chasing, whatever. But I heard a stat the other day that I just cannot get out of my head. So DJ Chark, his blow up, he kind of came out of the scene. It's been 2 full seasons now that we've seen him, and out of those 2 full seasons, he's had 10 performances where he has finished as a wide receiver 2 or better. So finished in the top 24 on any given week. So that's 10 weeks out of 2 full seasons. And 5 of those 10 weeks came in the first half of 2019. So he kind of put the league on notice when he first came into the league and had these big games. And then they were able to cap him pretty quickly. And he has struggled to find any sort of consistency since then. So when you've got Marvin Jones on that team, when you've got Laviska Shenault, when you've got Travis Etienne, who's going to be playing out of the slot as well, there are going to be a lot of targets to compete for on that team. So even without even looking at the finger injury, he's somebody that I wasn't really too excited about anyway. But now with this finger surgery, we saw what that did to Chris Godwin last year. Chris Godwin had a finger surgery, and that really, really screwed up his season. He started dropping the ball, and it worries me a little bit for DJ Chark. So he's somebody that I don't want to say is on my do not draft list because there are people that if they drop to a certain value, I'll take anybody at the right price. But he's not somebody that I'm really, going out and hoping to draft right now.
Yeah, I hear you on that. The only thing that I have concern with the stats and the numbers with Chark is that I think a lot of that inefficiency or lack of production didn't necessarily have to do with him. It had to do with the quarterback play, and it had to do with the fact that he was one of the only targets on the field. So yes, while that means he didn't have to compete for said targets, he was one of the only people the defenses were targeting in the first place, besides the quarterback. So now that there are more talent, or there's more talented players on the team to help spread defenses a little bit, I did like Chark because of that, with hopefully an upgrade at the quarterback position. But again, it's a rookie, so we're not exactly sure what his QBR is going to be, what his efficiency is going to be, his pass completions. So I'm unsure. But the one thing that really does put me over the top on here is we don't have any more clarification on this finger surgery, and it will affect him. So that does kind of scare me about Chark, which again, like I said, I really like him. So that it makes me sad that this happened. I hate injuries. I wish no one got hurt.
Yeah, we'll talk about Rashod Bateman in a little bit
I
and how much
know.
that one hurts us. But yeah, I mean, when you called it out, and that's such a good point, is there is so much more competition for targets now. In 2019, that game plan in Jacksonville was hand the ball off to Leonard Fournette, hand it off to Leonard Fournette again, and then take a shot down the field at DJ Chark, and that was pretty much
Yep.
all they had. And I'm trying to remember who else was even on that team. Yeah, I'm looking through right now. D.D. Westbrook. I mean, he had a couple decent games. Keelan Cole,
Hmm.
Marquise Lee, Chris Connolly, James O'Shaughnessy. There
Flash,
really
flash,
wasn't
flash, flash, flash. I mean, it was
exactly.
crazy.
Yeah. So
And
now it's
Chris Conley, speaking of drops, oh, he made me so angry a couple of fantasy games.
yeah, he's
Sorry.
he's always struggled with that a little bit, but
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't really think about that there was, everybody said that he took on the alpha role, but when you don't really have any competition, that's not saying that much. And now with
He's
Laviska Shenault and Marvin Jones there, he suddenly goes from being an alpha to the, third or fourth option on his own team. So just a
Mhm.
very, very different team makeup, coaching staff, quarterback, everything than what we saw when he was able to find success in 2019.
Mhm.
All right, let's talk about Allen Robinson a little bit. And oh man, I could talk about the Bears so much. I've been diving deep into these camp reports. I'm so excited about Justin Fields and David Montgomery and Darnell Mooney and everybody. But let's talk about this specifically. Allen Robinson and Andy Dalton have been developing a strong rapport in camp. So I'm wondering, do you think Allen Robinson's value changes at all if we've got Andy Dalton or Justin Fields as the quarterback?
I don't think so because Allen Robinson standalone is a wide receiver one. And I think he should be drafted accordingly, regardless of who is throwing him the football. Now, if there's going to be a veteran that is already building, chemistry with him, great. That makes me like him even more. But if Justin Fields were to be the quarterback, that doesn't like me. That doesn't mean blah. I speak English, I swear. That doesn't mean that I like Allen Robinson less. Yes, I did it. Score, success, go team. So I think that's where I am with Allen Robinson. I like that he is building rapport with the assumed starter in Andy Dalton. That's great. I'm still drafting him very high because he is Allen Robinson.
Hmm. I mean, I can't argue with the thing that you said there. Allen Robinson has just every
Except
single
for the
year.
fact that I barely spoke English for the middle half of that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can't argue against it. I can poke a
It
little fun at it,
happens.
but yeah, I mean, Allen Robinson has just had poor quarterback play his entire career and consistently overcomes it, and we see this
Hmm.
every single year. And I think whether it's Andy Dalton or Justin Fields that is quarterback, either are an upgrade from what he's seen thus far in his NFL career. Now, first of all, I want to shout out the Football Guys camp reports that are going to be dropping tomorrow. I am a part of that, and one of the teams that I'm covering, no surprise to anybody here, is the Chicago Bears. So I have
No.
yes, and it's been a lot of fun doing these deep dives, watching every coach interview, every player interview, reading every tweet from every beat reporter, every article. I mean, it's been a bit much. But what I will say is that Justin Fields, from what we've seen thus far in camp, is somebody who doesn't have a one read, tendency, which is what a lot of people knocked him for pre-draft. They said that he is spreading the ball around. He's finding anybody that's open. I mean, he's throwing touchdowns to guys that I've never even heard of before consistently.
Hmm.
On the flip side, what they're saying with Andy Dalton is that he is just enamored with Allen Robinson and is just hyper targeting him, which, if you look at what Andy Dalton has done in his career, is kind of exactly what he did with AJ Green. So
Hmm.
the kind of gut feeling I've had is that if Andy Dalton is the quarterback, it's going to be great for Allen Robinson. I think that he'll easily see 150, 160, maybe even more targets because
Ooh.
Andy Dalton knows that. I mean, he's seen 150 in back-to-back years, so that's kind of his
Oh yeah.
baseline at this point. And then he could see a
Yep.
little uptick with Andy
Just
Dalton.
a reminder, like he's so good.
I know it's unbelievable, and I worry that when Justin Fields comes in, he is going to one, take off with his legs a little bit more, which he's been showing already in camp, and two, spread the ball around a little bit more. That
Mm,
he is just finding
good point.
whoever is open on that team, and Matt Nagy's offense gets a lot of players open, and the problem is there hasn't been a quarterback that can complete those throws. So now with Justin Fields. They've been raving about his patience in the pocket and that he just waits for routes to develop, waits for the play to develop, and finds the open guy. So that worries me just a tinge. But the other thing, and I promise I'll stop talking about the Bears after this, is that Matt Nagy is apparently in love with Andy Dalton. So the media, the fans, everybody else on the coaching staff is, goo goo gaga for Justin Fields. But Matt Nagy just keeps talking about the professionalism in Andy Dalton and the confidence that he has in him. He said that, this guy is ready to go out and start right now if we needed him to. So we might see Andy Dalton starting a little bit longer than we want to as, Justin Fields fans, as fantasy fans, people that want to see the rushing young quarterbacks. Might have to wait just a little bit. I think that Andy Dalton could end up being in the picture a little bit longer than anybody wants him to be.
It's the mustache. It's Andy Dalton's new mustache. It's like giving him new swag. If anyone hasn't seen that yet, go look at a picture of Andy Dalton in his orange visor and his orange mustache. It's a thing to behold.
It almost touches his chin strap.
Like it is weird.
It's a little creepy.
It's kind of weird.
Before we get into the rest of the show, because we still have a lot of news to cover, I want to remind everybody listening to be sure to download the Football Guys mobile app today if you haven't already. It can be used on all smartphones and gives you all the same tools that you would find on our website at footballguys.com. Our Draft Dominator app will make sure that you have an edge above your teammates by customizing the advice specific to your team. Download today so Football Guys can help you win. All right, let's keep talking about wide receivers because, I feel like a lot of running back situations are kind of figured out. With quarterbacks, all we really have to talk about are injuries. With wide receivers, though, that's where a lot of the meat of the conversation is, who's ascending in the pecking order, who's on the roster bubble. And one guy right now that was everybody's, sleeper darling last year that kind of face planted was Bryan Edwards. But now Bryan Edwards is running with the first team. John Gruden cannot stop gushing about this guy. So, after that rookie faceplant, are you buying Bryan Edwards now in 2021?
No, the only Raider I am buying is going to be Darren Waller, obviously, and then Kenyon Drake because of his value. That's it. I don't want to have to rely on Derek Carr for anything else. I'm
Fair
good.
enough. I've seen some, and obviously, they're only sharing the highlights that they want you to see, but Bryan Edwards has made some spectacular catches in camp so far. And I get it. I mean, I'm with you. I love Darren Waller. I've got him, he's somebody that I'm comfortable taking in the late first, early second round of my redraft leagues. I think that Darren Waller is that good. And last year they didn't need a wide receiver because of what he did, but Nelson Agholor still was able to make his way to almost 100 targets and had a decent season. So I think that there still is an opportunity for somebody to step up as a wide receiver on that team. And while I'm not that crazy about Derek Carr either, Bryan Edwards is somebody who has all of the measurables that you want to see. He's got size, he's got speed, he's got strength, and that alone is something to get a little bit excited about. And then when you see some of these plays that he's making in camp, it's kind of hard not to. Now, one of the biggest predictors for how a wide receiver is going to fare throughout his career is how he does as a rookie. So that's a huge demerit that we've got right now working against Bryan Edwards because of his rookie season. But considering his ADP right now, he's basically free. Kind of like you said with Mecole Hardman, draft him in the last round of your draft. And if he doesn't pan out in the first couple weeks, you won't feel bad when you cut him for a running back or a quarterback that steps up or whatever else it may be. So, considering you can get him in the 18th round or later of your draft, Bryan Edwards is somebody that I think you should kind of keep an eye on because he might surprise some people.
What about Hunter Renfrow? I mean, he's still on the Raiders, right?
That is a good question. He is still on the Raiders, and
I would rather have Hunter Renfrow than I would Bryan Edwards.
Was he injured last year? Because Hunter Renfrow wasn't a name that I heard like anything about.
Because it's Derek Carr. That's probably why it wasn't a name that you've heard that much. He might have been, I'm not sure. But for me, Hunter Renfrow is a little bit more exciting because Renfrow plays it. I could be totally incorrect right now, but off the top of my head, I do believe that Renfrow is the slot guy here that we are talking about. And I think I would rather have Renfrow than Bryan Edwards. I'd also rather have Mecole Hardman than I would have Bryan Edwards. And the reason for that is because of the quarterback.
Yeah, I'm looking at it last year. I mean, Renfrow's numbers stayed pretty consistent from 2019 to 2020. Saw 71 targets as a rookie, saw 77 targets last year. Slightly better catch rates, slightly better yards. Touchdowns went down. So, I mean, there's a little bit. I feel like Hunter Renfrow really got that bump from Hard Knocks. So that's where people just kind of fell in love with Renfrow. He's such a likable guy, but I don't know if I'm 100% on that. Yeah, I'm just looking.
The name Hunter Renfrow, like I feel like Astro from the Jetsons needs to say it, like Roy. Like, yeah, Astro from the dog from the Jetsons. Like every time I hear the name Hunter Renfrow, I feel like it should be Astro saying it or Scooby Doo.
I like it. Somebody's gonna have to do that. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking at these target shares last year. It's crazy. Darren Waller saw 145, Nelson Agholor with 82, Hunter Renfrow with 77. I mean, there really is nobody but Darren Waller on that team.
Exactly.
So we'll see if Bryan Edwards can pick it up. But yeah, you might be right. There's probably not too much there, but given the ADP, why not?
Negative Nancy over here. Boo, Bryan Edwards. Next.
Let's talk about Michael Thomas, because this is this is just drama. I mean, that's all Michael Thomas has been since last offseason. And the newest story to this is that he failed to return multiple calls from the team last offseason.
For months.
Yeah. I mean, these guys, they're giving him over $100 million. The least you could do is pick up a phone call, right?
Did you see his latest tweet?
I did.
I don't know if it's his latest tweet, but he did tweet, and it was not ambiguously directed right at the Saints about, like reputation and things of that nature. Like, this is turning into a mess. Like, a mess.
Did you see?
It's just crazy.
One of the replies to the tweet that he liked. I mean, this is how crazy social media is nowadays.
I missed that bit.
Somebody saw that he liked a tweet, and what the tweet was, somebody goes, "This gives me the impression that Michael Thomas was injured last year and the Saints forced him to play because it was Drew Brees' final season, and that made his injury worse, and now he can't play in 2021. And Michael Thomas liked that tweet. So, I mean, everything is cryptic, and who really knows what the truth is. But I mean, at this point, are you drafting Michael Thomas?
And I mean, if he fell and fell and fell, which it sounds like he is, I might be tempted, because it is Michael Thomas at the end of the day. It's an elite wide receiver, capable of just having an astronomical ceiling in fantasy football. But that is a super duper. I am incredibly cautious and terrified. I was burned by Michael Thomas last year because of injury and suspension. But that's tough. That is really, really hard. And I don't like a lot of drama. I want things to be pretty consistent as much as humanly possible in this thing that we love called fantasy football educated guessing. And that is not consistency. And that does not give me faith that I can rely on Michael Thomas week in and week out. It's nerve wracking. And I would probably go out of my way to avoid him, but I might be in a situation where it's like, but it's the 8th round and Michael Thomas is still there. Maybe I'll
and that's where I've consistently kind of seen him go in as like 7th or 8th round, but
yeah.
I don't even want to take him at that. I mean, we know that
I don't blame you for not.
Yeah, we know that he's going to miss probably half the season as he's recovering from a surgery. When he does come back from a surgery, if he comes back from this surgery, we don't know what his relationship's going to be like with the team. We don't know who the quarterback's going to be. There are so many question marks here that, like, sure, he could obviously turn back into 2019 Michael Thomas, and, he could end up winning a lot of leagues for a lot of people. But, in the 7th or 8th round where he's getting drafted, there is still a lot of value. You can get, guys that are going to be starting running backs for their team. You can get guys that are going to see 100+ targets. I feel like where he's getting drafted is just way too risky for all the things that are going on right now. So,
it makes sense.
He realistically, I probably wouldn't even be thinking about taking him until at least the 10th round. And
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah,
he's not drafting or dropping that far. So, looks like I am SOL, and I won't be having much Michael Thomas on my teams this year.
Oh, well.
Right. Now let's talk about Justin Jefferson, because I don't know if you saw it. I mean, luckily, there was a little bit of a sigh of relief seeing what it was, but he went down with what looked to be a pretty nasty shoulder injury.
It was not pretty.
Yeah. Separated shoulder, sprained AC joint. I'm not a doctor, but I have had some shoulder problems in my life. I separated a shoulder myself, and it is not fun. I've sprained an AC joint, also not fun. We've seen this injury linger for a lot of guys. Dalvin Cook, Christian McCaffrey, they've had these AC joint sprains, and they don't seem to go away. So does this move the needle for you in regards to Justin Jefferson's value?
I mean, he has another hand and another arm, so I'm kidding. I'm being very facetious right now. Yes, it's worrisome. It's very worrisome. But at the same time, this is one of those ones. I don't know. I will tilt if he falls to me in a draft. I will lament. There will be wailing and gnashing of teeth, and I won't know what to do, because it's very hard to pass over someone like Justin Jefferson, who is still very young. And when we were young, we bounced back from injury a lot faster than we do now in our more goldener ages, which I just made up that word, but we'll go with it. So yeah, it does move the needle for me. It makes me a lot more cautious, which means I might want to stock up a little bit more on some wide receiver 2s and things of that nature, just in case I cannot use him for several weeks. But I don't know if the benefit of having him on my team outweighs the cost.
Yeah. And, the thing, he had no problem getting up to speed last year. I mean, he did. The first couple weeks were a little bit slow, despite the lack of preseason and all that. But he, went on to set the rookie
He's
receiving
a
record. So
beast.
we know what this guy is capable of. But shoulder injuries definitely worry me a little bit because, like I said, with Dalvin Cook, Christian McCaffrey, I mean, these things do linger. And while they're saying that it's just going to be a couple weeks, the risk of re-injury when you've got a shoulder, and I mean, you see how football players play. They drop their shoulders and they hit each other. So that's why these flare up consistently. And
Mhm.
it worries me a little. So I haven't, I try so hard not to overreact this time of year as much as, we have to talk about content and do all that. And I was sitting there looking at my rankings, and right now I've got Justin Jefferson at 8, and then I have Allen Robinson at 9, DK Metcalf at 10. And I'm thinking about putting those two guys ahead of Justin Jefferson, and I haven't done it quite yet, but I will be keeping an eye on this.
It
And,
makes sense. It makes sense, though, Dave. Makes sense.
if there is any hiccup in his recovery, if they say that, hey, he's questionable for week 1 or anything like that, I will probably be sliding him down my rankings a little bit because shoulder injuries are very, very worrisome.
Yes.
Now, we've got some good injury news. Amari Cooper, who has been dealing with this ankle injury and said he wasn't going to play all all preseason, and people were starting to get worried about that. He is off the PUP list and back to practice. So, where is Amari Cooper now? I mean, are you still worried about him? I know we talked about this a couple weeks ago and we were very worried, but he's back at practice now. So, do we move him back up the rankings?
Yeah, we do. And this is what I said when I spoke about Amari Cooper before, where it's like, I need to see how far this progresses before I start freaking out. And luckily, there's nothing to freak out about. So Amari Cooper is still going to stay the Amari Cooper that we know and love. Luckily, the one that does not play for the Raiders and no longer has the super obnoxious home road splits. He's a lot more consistent with the Cowboys. I think specifically for Amari Cooper, it's going to be Dak Prescott's health. So that is something I'm also going to be monitoring as well, because it's a two-person to tango kind of situation when you have a quarterback and a wide receiver that you need to score fantasy points. But yeah, it is great news for Amari Cooper. Also great news for CeeDee Lamb. So I like it.
Yeah. I have not really moved my rankings at all too much because I'm already very bullish on Amari Cooper. I've got him as my wide receiver 12. I've got him as a low-end wide receiver 1.
Ooh, that is bullish. Spicy.
Yeah, and
Caliente.
everybody's getting just bright-eyed and bushy-tailed about CeeDee Lamb, and I get it. He was a very good receiver, but I still think that this is Amari's team. Him and Dak Prescott, they've spent years developing a rapport. I don't expect that to change. I think this is Amari Cooper's team. I think he's going to lead the team in targets, yards, touchdowns, all of that fun stuff. So I'm happy to see that he's back. I didn't want to freak out and slip him out of my wide receiver 1 in my rankings. So I kept him there at 12, knowing that he is back at practice. Makes me very excited, and I'm wishing him the best, hoping for a speedy recovery. And as much as I like CeeDee Lamb and can't wait to see the career that he has, I think he's just gonna have to wait because I think that this is still Amari Cooper's team.
I'm looking forward to seeing what Michael Gallup can do with Dak Prescott back.
Yep. It'll be exciting. I mean, this whole team, we saw Michael Gallup have a great year 2 seasons ago, and then last year everything just kind of hit a wall when Dak went down. So excited to see this. It's also a contract year for Michael Gallup. So, he might want to throw a little bit of, extra effort out there. And realistically, I think Michael Gallup is good enough that there are like 10 teams he can go to in the NFL right now where he would be the wide receiver 1 on that team. The fact that
I
he's
think so too.
on this depth chart, that they went out and they drafted CeeDee Lamb when they had Michael Gallup. I mean, it's still a head scratcher to me, but we'll see if it works out this year. Now, we kind of teased this a little bit earlier. We're going to talk about Rashod Bateman. This is a very recent injury.
Do you need to get tissues first?
Yeah, I mean, this one is brutal for me. Anybody that's watched this show before or watched any of my other shows knows that I'm a huge Rashod Bateman fan, and he went down just a couple hours ago with an apparent groin injury. And there's all sorts of speculation. He might need surgery. It could be a few weeks. It could go into the season. So what are we supposed to do about Rashod Bateman right now?
Freak out. Hit the panic button on Rashod Bateman. I am staying away, and I am also hoisting up Mark Andrews for this reason. It is not great for Rashod Bateman truthers. I mean, he was also injured a little bit last week too. Now we have this thing going on. Don't know if they're related. Wink, wink. But who knows? This isn't good. For me, it's not. I don't like it. I'm staying away. And for everyone listening to this now, I did text Dave immediately and was like, oh no. And he's like, oh no. And we had this moment where I felt really bad for Dave, but no, I'm out. I can't do it.
Yeah, this is tough. And I feel like I immediately after the draft, I was so excited that Rashod Bateman landed in Baltimore and Lamar Jackson got his receiver. And immediately I, threw Rashod Bateman into my wide receiver 2 up there, like, as a top 24 wide receiver. And then as the offseason's gone on and I've done a little bit more research and, talked to some other people, I've started to cool on my Rashod Bateman rankings a little bit. And he started to slide down draft boards, knowing that this is a run first team and that Mark Andrews is there and Hollywood Brown is there. And it's going to be tough for him to really find success. And now knowing that he has this injury, which just like we talked about the AC joint, I mean, these groin injuries tend to linger as well. And, with him missing camp as a rookie, that's going to affect him as well. So there are a lot of big red flags with this injury. So, yeah,
I'm sorry, my friend.
Yeah, it's not something I like talking about.
No.
It's painful here, but I have dropped Rashod Bateman all the way down to wide receiver 42 in my rankings.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Might be dropping.
Makes sense. I mean, oh.
Yeah. I'm with you, though. You called out that this should be a boost to Mark Andrews, and it should be. I mean, Mark Andrews, I think that he was going to be heavily affected by Rashod Bateman there, and knowing if Rashod Bateman's going to not be able to make it through the preseason games, not be able to make it through camp, not able to develop that offseason rapport with Lamar Jackson. What's Lamar Jackson going to do? He's going to revert back to Old Faithful, throw the ball to Mandrews again.
Yep.
So I'm with you. Now, Rondale Moore, another rookie, not injury related. We should probably have like a better flow to this where we cover injuries and then buzz, but we'll work on that.
It keeps you on your toes though, because it's like, which one is it? Is it just news or is it injury? It's all over the place. Who cares?
And now we're going to talk about Rondale Moore, who is healthy. And Cliff Kingsbury said that he envisions him playing an inside wide receiver role. So does this, I mean, I don't really know how we're supposed to take this, but is this something we should be excited about? Is this something that we should have expected? What do you think, Lauren?
I wasn't really excited about Rondale Moore to begin with. He was some in Dynasty, yes, but this show is a redraft show. I was not really all in on him or even really all that excited quite yet when it comes to 2021 redraft. So for me, I'm kind of expected something a little bit more flashy to be coming out instead of just like inside wide receiver. It's like, okay, who's your tight end? Like, what are you doing, people? Let's go. I need answers. This is just so very ambiguous to me that I'm not sold on anything with it.
I think ambiguous is the best way to put it. And I don't know if this means he's going to be playing on a slot. I mean, if it means he's going to be taking slot snaps and taking over Larry Fitzgerald's role, that's something to be really excited about. But they didn't come out right and say that. They just said inside receiver role. So I think that is something to get a little bit excited about because those inside receivers, they've got a way of finding targets a lot more than guys that are just playing strictly on the outside. And there was some discussion as to how Rondale Moore was going to be utilized in the NFL. So I do like that. Some people were saying that he might take on sort of a Tyreek Hill sort of role where he's just flying down the field and getting open, blowing the top off of defenses. But if they're going to be playing him inside and trying to get him the ball across the middle of the field and in space, that's where you can do a lot of damage with that speed and agility and strength and balance. And he might end up being just a yards after the catch monster in this role. So, that does, I don't want to say anything drastic, like I'm, shooting him up my rankings, but it does make him a little bit more intriguing. I might be sliding him up a little bit because of this news, but
I'll keep an eye on it. It's not exciting enough for me to want to do that at all, but it is intriguing enough that I wish to know more. So I will pay closer attention to it.
I mean, we know the kid's a freak athlete, and we haven't had a chance to watch him play football in a little while now. But he's probably, of all the rookies that are coming in this year, I'd say Najee Harris, and then obviously some of the quarterbacks are who I'm most excited about. But as far as wide receivers, like we know Jamar Chase is great. We know Rashod Bateman's great. Devonta Smith, it's going to be fun to see what he can do in Philly. But I think Rondale Moore is the guy that I'm most excited about because I think we're going to find out very quickly if he's going to be a force in the NFL or if he's just not going to be able to get up to speed. We'll find out soon. So Rondale Moore is a guy that I'm really, really going to have close eyes on as soon as week 1. That'll wrap it up for wide receiver talk. But now we've got some quarterbacks to talk about here. We've talked about Aaron Rodgers so much on the show, and hopefully this is the last time we have to talk about him this offseason. But apparently Aaron Rodgers and the Packers have agreed to work on a deal to trade him after the 2021 season. So who knows if things can change? Maybe a Super Bowl keeps him around. Maybe who knows? I mean, we don't know. But where do you expect to see Aaron Rodgers play now in 2022?
Denver, maybe? I don't know. This reminds me so much of like when you break up with your significant other, but you already have plans to go on vacation. So it's kind of like, well, we'll break up after we, come back from vacation.
Right.
Like, okay, whatever.
That,
I don't know what
that
to do
is
with that.
such a good analogy. And I'm with you. It's weird. And I don't know. I mean, he just, I've said this, and I hate saying it over and over again, but he's just kind of a crybaby. I mean, we know this about Aaron Rodgers now. As long as he's been in the league,
Diva status.
he is a diva, prima donna, whatever you want to call him. I mean, that's just kind of who Aaron Rodgers is, and we should have expected this. And it wouldn't shock me if suddenly a Super Bowl win or something like that keeps him, or maybe they go in the next draft and they draft a guy in the first round that's a receiver that he really wants, and then he decides to stay. We don't know what's going to happen, but yeah, I think that if we're wondering about where he's going to play in 2022, you've got to assume it's the same places that we expected him to play this year: Denver, Carolina, maybe even New Orleans. These teams that are just a quarterback away from being pretty good. So we'll see how that shakes out, but it wouldn't surprise me if this is all
One
water
thing
under
we
the
know
bridge.
for sure is that we will be talking about this all over again next year. Guaranteed.
Spare me. Spare
Right?
me. All right. We got some news on Carson Wentz, who had this surgery, and they said that he was going to be out. What was he? I think it was 5 to 12 weeks is what they said. And the report from yesterday said that they expect him to be back sooner rather than later. And then today he was spotted at practice. No boot, no tape, 7 days removed from a foot surgery and just walking around in a pair of sneakers. So do you
Yeah.
expect to see Carson Wentz play week one? Same with Quentin
Ooh.
Nelson, actually. They had the same exact surgery within like 2 days of each other, and they're both at camp with no boot or tape on now. So do you expect to see these guys week one?
Week one, no, but I think the sooner rather than later is interesting. This whole Carson Wentz thing is very interesting because before it was out 2 to 3 weeks. Then it was, you have to have surgery. He'll be out 5 to 300 weeks. Then it was, oh, he's elected to not have surgery, which I heard that report as well. And then it's like, oh, just kidding. He is having surgery. I'm going through Carson Wentz, Philadelphia. Oh, Lord. Sorry, Eagles fans. Carson Wentz, Indianapolis Colts whiplash with what is going on right now. So I don't know if he's going to play week one. Like, honestly, probably not. But if he did, I'd be like, so you all been lying to us the whole time. Because what actually happened? Was it a splinter? Well, I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know what's happening right now with all of these different reports, everything that is coming out with this. It's just, it feels very weird. And I don't really know what to expect. I have to sit down and write a dissertation thesis on Carson Wentz's injury for me to really comprehend what the heck is going on.
Yeah, it's tough to keep up with it at this point.
So crazy.
From the reports, I mean, it wasn't a very intrusive surgery, that it was going to be quick, that, they were saying that, he could be back pretty soon. So, we're looking at pretty much from the time he had the surgery until week one is just about 5 weeks. So
that's true. That's true. Time is strange.
This time of year. Yeah, it's
crazy. I don't even know what day it is. What's my name? Who are you? I don't know where I am.
Nice to meet you. I'm Dave. You are Lauren, and this is Football Guys 2 Points.
That's right. Thank you. I needed that.
But yeah, I'm kind of excited knowing that Carson Wentz could play, and like we talked about the massive overreaction to Saquon Barkley, there was a massive overreaction to Jonathan Taylor because of this news about Quentin Nelson and Carson Wentz, and now he went from a top 5-6 pick overall in fantasy football to mid to late second round. So somebody like me who's pretty plugged into the news, try not to overreact and try to really dissect every story that comes out. I just see this as an opportunity to draft Jonathan Taylor for cheaper than I could a couple of weeks ago. So I'm all over it for myself personally. We talked about Amari Cooper returning to practice, but Dak Prescott also returned to practice this week and resumed throwing, but they mentioned that it was resumed lightly throwing. So do you think that he's going to be ready week one? He's already got the foot injury. Now he's got a shoulder problem. Should we be worried?
Nah, I'm worried, possibly. Cautious is the word I would like to use for Dak Prescott when it comes to fantasy. Be prepared to have a backup quarterback just in case in single QB leagues with Dak Prescott. But I think he'll still play week one. It would shock me if he didn't. And that means that they, again, have been lying to us all throughout this, which, again, would surprise me, really, because what do they care about us fantasy folks? But There was also some things that Troy Aikman said too, like, oh, this has to be so much more serious than what they're letting on because he didn't even travel with the team and whatever it was he said at the Hall of Fame game. That I think it is another situation where people are kind of blowing it out of proportion. They just don't want him to be unfresh, if you will, and be, worn out after last season and coming into this season. It's going to be an extended season long with all the the extra game that we have going forward. So I'm not too worried about this, but it is something I'll keep my eye on though, and just make sure, because Dak Prescott is pretty pivotal for the entire organization.
And I agree with everything you said. And I think the theme of this show is don't overreact to news that's happening weeks before the season, because we have said that Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, Carson Wentz, Dak Prescott, people are freaking out about these guys, and I don't think you should. I think this just opens opportunities to draft them for cheaper than you could have a couple weeks ago, and I think that you should take advantage of that. And I think that you and I have agreed when talking about all four of those players.
Yep.
So I'm with you. I'm not that worried about Dak. They gave him the week off because he had a strain in his shoulder, and he hadn't thrown a football in almost a year. Like, the fact that he strained his shoulder, whatever. It's not something that I'm freaking out about. I expect them to handle this well. From everything I've read, the foot injury is completely behind him, so I'm not worried about it either. We only got a couple minutes left here, but we have to talk about this. Deshaun Watson is rumored to be traded to the Eagles. I'm so sick of talking about Aaron Rodgers and Deshaun Watson, but this is the rumor now, so we got to talk about it. Deshaun Watson to the Eagles. Do you think it happens? And if so, what happens to all the Jalen Hurts shares that I drafted?
All right. Yes, I think it happens. And I think that Jalen Hurts will become the backup. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it seems like too, because the rumors that I've seen don't even have Jalen Hurts on the table. It is just 3 picks for Deshaun Watson. And that makes.
Let's hope it doesn't, because I really want to see what Jalen Hurts can do. I really think that he deserves this opportunity to be a starter in the NFL. I think that he's worked for this for a long time. I hope it doesn't happen, because I think this kid really deserves it. But unfortunately, I think my gut is telling me that this is going to be Deshaun Watson's last hurrah. But who knows? Yeah. I'm sorry. Again, this isn't a bad show for you. I'm sorry, Dave.
Well, just what they're doing to Deshaun Watson is crazy. Too. Did you see they had him taking reps as safety? Like, they've got their $200 million quarterback out there playing safety. Like, the Texans, they couldn't have handled this situation worse. And I don't know what's going on with the legal issues or what's going on. All I want to comment on is how terribly the Houston Texans have managed every single step of this situation since the day
many situations, not just this one, many situations. They're terrible.
Deshaun Watson for David Johnson. I mean, we can go on and on and on, but I'm just talking about from the second that Deshaun Watson said, I want to get traded from the Houston Texans, every single action that has happened from then up until now has been just severely mismanaged. So yeah, it would bum me out because I'm with you. I mean, Jalen Hurts is pretty much useless. If Deshaun Watson goes to Philadelphia, he's Jordan Love with a little bit more name recognition at that point. So that'll be a tough pill to swallow, and I'll lose a lot of money in my best ball leagues. But hey, that's why we play, right? It's all a gamble.
It's a gamble. Yep.
Before we sign off, I want to remind everybody that if you are a high-stakes fantasy football player, you can get a chance to win $500,000 by playing in the Football Guys Players Championship. Entry is $350, or you could build 3 teams for $1,000. Get a chance to play in a league with a life-changing prize, and on top of that $500,000 grand prize, there will be a total of $3.7 million given out in prizes. So find the league on FFPC and draft your team as soon as possible. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Football Guys 2-Point Stance. Be sure to subscribe to the Football Guys YouTube page for a new episode every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. That is at youtube.com/footballguystavs. You can find the rest of the Football Guys shows there as well. Be sure to tune in next week because it's camp season. We've got preseason games this weekend. We're going to have a lot to talk about. So thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next week.